My name is Aiden. I am 28, and my hands are shaking as I stare at the wedding planner's contract. My mother breathing down my neck like a storm about to hit, she insists on every detail. From the floral arrangements to the guest list, I try to explain, I try to reason. But every word feels like water against steel. She wants control. She wants perfection. She wants my life her way, and I feel trapped. Suffocated, my heart racing, my mind screaming, I cannot believe this is happening on the one day I imagined as mine. I pace across my tiny apartment, the city buzzing outside, oblivious to my chaos. I think about every compromise I have already made, the seating chart I adjusted, the dress I nearly changed, and still, it is not enough. She says I do not understand the family expectations. She says I will regret decisions I do not make. I feel a mix of anger and sadness, betrayal stinging like fire in my chest. The wedding, the people, the love of my life waiting. And yet I cannot breathe. I look at the invitations scattered on the table, each one a reminder of her insistence. My fiancé calling, asking if I am okay. I lie. I say everything is fine. But I am not fine. I am trembling. I am furious. I am desperate. I know one word could stop this. One sentence could set the record straight. I picture myself in front of all the guests. Her eyes wide, demanding. I smile, because I know I have the power in this moment. One line, and everything changes. I feel the weight of years of manipulation, of overbearing love, and of silence. I feel my own strength rising. A fire I did not know I had. My hands tighten around the contract. I think of freedom, of choice, of a life not dictated by another. My stomach twists with anticipation. I hear her approaching, her voice sharp, full of expectation. I take a deep breath. I imagine the faces of everyone I love, the people who support me, the ones who will witness my courage. And I realize I am ready. I have to be. The room feels smaller with every second. The tension, almost physical. I smile again, because I know my one sentence will echo louder than all her words. The front door clicks. She is here, and I am ready, and that is when I say it, the words ready on my tongue, the world holding its breath, my heart pounding, and the screen freezes, leaving you wondering, what did I say? How will she react? Will this wedding survive? Subscribe to see how I finally take control of my life. My mother always had a way of making everyone feel smaller, even the people she claimed to love the most. I remember dinners where her compliments were like coins tossed reluctantly, my father quiet, fading into the background. My sister constantly trying to earn her approval, me usually just trying not to breathe wrong. At work, I am known as reliable, ambitious, but also stubborn. A few colleagues admire me, a few resent me, and I can feel the subtle calculations in every glance. I think about my fiancé, Jamie, patient, kind, full of laughter that makes my chest feel lighter. They see the best in me even when I do not, yet even with them, the shadow of my mother's influence creeps in, her calls, her suggestions. Her insistence that family comes first, always. Sometimes I wonder if she loves me or the idea of me. The child she crafted in her own image. I reflect on past mistakes. The time I skipped my high school graduation to work a summer job she disapproved of. The years I stayed silent while she dictated my life. Small rebellions squashed, my choices questioned, each one a brick in the wall I am only now trying to climb over. My friends notice the tension. They ask why I never let her see the wedding plans. Why I flinch at her voice. I shrug. I lie. I say everything is fine, but inside I am a storm. I feel both guilty and justified, the contradiction exhausting. My mother's favorite tactic was comparison. I hear it in her praise of my sister. Her subtle comments about cousins, old friends, colleagues. I feel the sting of inadequacy she dishes out. Yet I also see her fear, the fear that I will take what she cannot control, that I will live a life unshaped by her rules, and maybe that is why this wedding feels like a battlefield, not a celebration. I notice how even small gestures from friends and family carry weight, the cousin who flinches when my mother enters the room, the colleague who smiles nervously when she critiques my plans, the distant relative who waits to see who wins. I realize these tensions have existed quietly for years. Simmering beneath the surface, I think about what I have sacrificed, the dreams I shelved, the words I never said, and I feel a pang of regret mixed with determination. I know this wedding is more than a day. It is a chance to assert my voice, to test boundaries, to see if relationships can survive honesty. The thought is thrilling and terrifying. I remember one conversation with Jamie, eyes serious, holding my hands. They said sometimes love means standing firm, and I think of the future, of possible betrayals, of confrontations yet to come, of my mother's disapproval, and the whispers that may follow, And yet beneath it all, a quiet hope persists. That boundaries can be drawn, that respect can exist, that people can choose their own happiness even when it angers those who feel entitled to control it. I picture the wedding again, the smiles, the laughter. The moment when I finally speak, when the past meets the present, when my choices are mine alone. And the tension coils tighter, waiting for release. And I know, deep down, the next steps will reveal more than just who is right. They will reveal who I am, and how much I am willing to fight for that, leaving everyone wondering, what will happen when I finally refuse to bend? The day of the rehearsal arrived, and I could feel the tension like static in the air. My mother arrived early, as always, clipboard in hand, scrutinizing every detail, every guest, every table. Her eyes sharp, assessing, judging. A betrayal that hit harder than I expected. I wanted to confront her, to shout, to make her see she was crossing a line. And risk a scene, or wait, plan, and speak when the time was mine. I felt the weight of every relationship pressing in. Jamie's hand on my shoulder. Steady, supportive. Reminding me that this was not just my fight. My friends nodding silently, eyes full of concern. And yet my mother's influence was undeniable. My voice all tangled in one impossible moment, and then the tipping point came. The florist called flustered, explaining how my mother had insisted on changing flowers I had approved, and for a second I froze, disbelief, anger and hurt, all mixing into a sharp ache. My mind raced. Should I call her out? Should I cancel? Should I make this my moment of rebellion? But my own life, leaving me standing there, heart racing, decisions unmade, waiting, and the screen freezes, leaving the question hanging. Will I bend, fight, or finally break free? The morning of the wedding drew near, and the consequences of my choices were crashing down like a tidal wave. My mother's subtle manipulations had already begun to ripple outward, the florist sending texts with panicked notes about last-minute changes, the caterer hinting at delays, every vendor seemingly caught in her web. I felt the weight of responsibility crush me, knowing one wrong word could unravel everything. Jamie tried to calm me, but even their reassurances sounded distant, like echoes from a different world. My mother's calls became constant, her tone sharper, more insistent. She questioned budgets, schedules, seating, and I realized she was testing me, seeing if I would falter, give in, and I felt my patience stretch to the breaking point. At work, colleagues noticed my distracted calls, my short replies, whispers of family drama weaving through my professional life. I hated that she could touch this part of me too. That even my reputation outside my home felt vulnerable. I tried to delegate, to insulate, but every small action seemed to invite her interference. I felt trapped in a cage of my own making. Every choice weighed, every compromise costing me a piece of my sanity. I began to question myself. Did I handle the florist correctly? Did I miscommunicate with the caterer? And the doubt gnawed at me, sharp and relentless. My mother's approval, her gaze, it haunted me, even as I knew I had to resist. I remembered past betrayals, old lessons of manipulation, and I realized this was more than a wedding. It was a battlefield of control, ethics, and love. I weighed the risks. Bending to her demands would preserve peace but betray my own voice. Standing firm could provoke a scene, damage relationships, possibly fracture family bonds forever. And yet, the thought of surrender made my stomach twist with anger and fear. I felt my hands shake as I rearranged timelines, double-checked every vendor, every schedule, every guest list, trying to regain control. But my mother's presence loomed like a shadow, her eyes everywhere, judging, guiding, manipulating. Every step I took felt measured, every smile forced, the tension electric. I thought of Jamie, of the people who believed in me, their faith a lifeline. But even that felt tenuous, fragile against my mother's relentless drive, the air thick with anticipation. And then came the text from my cousin. Subtle, polite, but loaded. Mom has some ideas about the ceremony that might surprise you. And my pulse spiked. A cold realization hitting me. She had allies, networks, silent enforcers of her vision. I felt the walls closing in, the choices multiplying, every path fraught with risk. I paced, heart hammering. My mind a storm of strategy, fear, and fury. I knew the tipping point was near. That one sentence, one decision, could ignite chaos or finally carve space for my voice. I felt the heat of the moment, the stakes higher than ever. And as I heard her footsteps approaching the room, each step deliberate, measured, the screen freezes, leaving the tension raw, leaving the question screaming. Will I bend, fight, or finally take control of my own life? And who will survive the fallout? The night before the wedding, I finally confronted my mother, my voice steady but my heart pounding. The apartment quiet except for the hum of the city outside. I laid out the evidence, the florist texts, the vendor calls, the subtle manipulations, expecting anger, shock, maybe even denial. But what I heard instead made my chest tighten. She looked at me calmly, almost sad, and said something I never saw coming. She confessed that the wedding had never been about control alone, that she had been protecting me, that years ago a distant relative had tried to interfere with my family's celebrations, undermining plans and spreading rumors. She had learned to anticipate threats, to manipulate situations, so that no one could harm what she cared about. My shock was immediate, disbelief washing over me like cold water. I felt my anger falter, replaced by confusion. I wanted to shout, to accuse, but part of me understood the strategy, the obsession, the constant insistence that nothing go wrong. Yet the betrayal still stung, because her way had crossed every line. Her protection had become suffocation. I thought about every argument, every tension-filled phone call, every tiny compromise I had made, and realized that the truth reframed everything. My mother's interference was rooted in fear, in love twisted by past pain. I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was tangled with lingering resentment, the realization hitting me hard that even with the explanation, I had the right to my choices, to my voice, to stand firm. I looked at her, really looked, and saw a woman exhausted by decades of guarding, by battles no one else knew existed, and I felt a strange mixture of anger and clarity. I knew now that my struggle was not just about flowers or seating charts. It was about boundaries, respect, and finally asserting myself in a way that honored both her intentions and my independence. I thought about Jamie, waiting patiently, trusting me to navigate this chaos. I thought about friends who had silently supported me, whose faith in my judgment had never wavered. I realized the stakes were higher than ever, not because of vendors or budgets, but because of trust, because of the fragile threads holding family together. I felt my pulse accelerate, the moral weight of my next step pressing down. And then I remembered the line I had rehearsed, the one sentence that could shift everything, that could draw a boundary clearly, sharply, and finally. I smiled, not triumphantly, but with resolve, a calm steel running through me. I knew that speaking it would not erase the past. It would not remove all tension, but it would set the tone, the rules, the respect I deserved. The screen freezes just as my mother opens her mouth again. And the words I am about to say hang in the air, leaving the audience breathless, wondering, what is the sentence? How will she react? And will this finally end the battle? Leaving everything teetering on the edge of revelation and resolution. The morning of the wedding arrived, sunlight spilling through the windows, and I felt the weight of every choice pressing down on me. My mother's gaze sharp, expectant, as if waiting for me to stumble. I could hear Jamie moving around the apartment, calm, patient, trusting me to navigate the storm I had created. I held the invitation in my hands, the seating chart sprawled on the table. The florist confirmations, every detail a reminder of control and compromise. I took a deep breath, heart hammering, knowing that one decision could ripple through family, friends, and even my own sense of self. I imagined bending, giving in to my mother's demands. The path easy, in theory, but suffocating, a temporary peace bought at the cost of my voice, my independence, my dignity. Then I imagined standing firm, speaking my one sentence, claiming the right to my choices. The path risky, possibly explosive, but liberating. I weighed it, calculating consequences. Seeing the tension etched on my mother's face, the trust in Jamie's eyes, the quiet encouragement from friends. And I realized the cost of silence was higher than confrontation. I felt my stomach tighten, the air thick with anticipation. I knew I could not back down. I could not let fear dictate my life. I pictured the wedding hall, the guests waiting, all eyes on me at some point. I knew that my words would set the tone, define boundaries, and perhaps even reshape relationships. I thought of the past betrayals, the subtle manipulations, the years of compromises, and I felt resolve harden within me, a quiet, unyielding determination. I knew this moment was mine, fully, entirely, no longer shadowed by someone else's expectations. I stood tall, shoulders back, inhaled deeply, and spoke the sentence I had rehearsed, clear, firm, and deliberate. My mother's eyes widened. A flicker of surprise, then reflection. I could see her calculating her next move, yet the tension shifted. Balance restored. Boundaries drawn. A subtle nod, acknowledgement, and a hint of respect in her expression. I felt a rush of relief, but also awareness of the cost. Some relationships had shifted, subtle fractures appearing, yet others strengthened. Trust renewed. I looked at Jamie, smiling, silently proud. I saw friends exchanging glances, a mix of surprise and admiration. The wedding itself now unfolding with a new energy, the tension transformed into anticipation, the moral weight of my choice settling comfortably. I felt empowered, independent, yet mindful of the responsibility. The decision had consequences, some unpredictable. But the clarity, the ownership of my voice, the assertion of self, made every risk worth it. And as I stepped toward the hall, my mother walking beside me, cautious but present, Jamie's hand in mine, I realized the choice had defined more than the wedding. It had defined me. Leaving the audience wondering how this assertion of independence will affect future family dynamics, and if the balance between love and control can truly last beyond the ceremony. The wedding day ended, and the hall slowly emptied, laughter fading into memory. I sat in a quiet corner, Jamie beside me, holding my hand, and I let myself breathe for the first time in weeks. The chaos of planning, the tension with my mother, the betrayals, the compromises, all of it felt like a storm I had weathered. I thought about the moment I finally spoke, the sentence that drew the line, the choice that changed everything. I realized that standing firm was not just about a wedding, it was about claiming my voice, honoring my boundaries, respecting myself. I looked at my mother, sitting a few tables away, quiet, contemplative, and I understood her love was real. Though tangled, though expressed in ways that sometimes hurt, I felt forgiveness rising naturally, not forced. A calm acknowledgement that we were both learning, both adjusting. I thought about the people who had supported me. Jamie, friends, colleagues, even distant family, who had cheered me silently. I felt gratitude, a deep appreciation for the network of trust and love that had held me. I reflected on the lessons. That control can come from fear. That manipulation can be hidden behind care. That courage sometimes means speaking even when it risks conflict. That boundaries are necessary, not optional. And that respect must be mutual. I thought about my own growth, how I had discovered strength I did not know I possessed, patience I had honed, and the clarity of self that comes only from facing a moral dilemma fully. I realized the wedding was never just an event. It was a crucible, a test of relationships, resilience, and identity. And now, as the candles dimmed, and the hall emptied, I felt a calm certainty, a balance restored, not perfect, not without challenges, but real, achievable, and mine. I imagined the future. The quiet moments with Jamie, the conversations with my mother, the subtle shifts in family dynamics. All carrying forward the lessons learned, the respect earned, the voice claimed. I smiled, thinking of the one sentence that had started this transformation, and I wondered how many moments in life pass unnoticed. Where silence seems easier than confrontation, where compromise feels safer than standing firm. I wanted to leave something with those watching, something lasting, a question to reflect on. What would you have done in my place? Would you have spoken, stayed silent, or found another path? I hoped the story left more than suspense, more than entertainment. I hoped it left insight. An understanding that life's challenges are rarely simple, that love and control often intertwine. That courage is a choice repeated over time, not a single act, and as I watched the last lights flicker off, the hall empty, the night calm, I felt a sense of closure, a story told, a lesson learned, a balance achieved. A life slightly reshaped by one decision, one sentence, one moment of courage. And I knew that moving forward, I would carry both the memory and the lesson, ready for whatever challenges came next. Leaving the audience with the lingering thought: what boundaries would you protect, and at what cost?